Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful weekend and a wonderful 19th of May 2025 as we kick off a new week of the wonderful things in life. Some new people out here to touch on what I do. All sports topics from the past to the present, correlate the two together, historical moments in all sports, to the ones we have going on today on amongst some of the lingering issues. I touch on my opinion on all of those, give a historical perspective and an analytical perspective because I'm more analytical than I am of the fandom route because too many people use this for fandom versus analysis, where this is what should have been used for to begin with. My shows are live on the X, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Rumble platforms, which will also be uploaded to the Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify platforms once the show is complete. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful weekend and a wonderful day today. Nice and gorgeous here in Cincinnati. Hit mid-70s today. Got a chance to explore the outside a little bit. Got a chance to take in some nice warm weather, and it was just a thing of beauty today. So I'm just going to get right down to it here real quick. Of course, the big news over the weekend in the NFL, which is something I said was going to spark a lot of debate. It finally came, actually a little sooner than I thought, but it can't come through anyways. It was the official contract signing of Brock Purdy to the San Francisco 49ers. 5 years, $260 million, 185 guaranteed. A rarity I never heard of, a full no trade clause in his contract, which is something I don't think anybody in the NFL has. It's a first for me. Everyone's going to have their opinion on it. I mean, I get it. Good, bad, pretty, ugly. Some people are saying wholly overpay. Some people calling him from Mr. Relevant to relevant. But the guy has a Super Bowl appearance, had a pretty good year last year. Just everything that happened in San Francisco with, the injuries to Christian McCaffrey, who was never healthy, the drama involving one of the players, I can't remember, Laura Campbell, I can't think of his name, who basically refused to go into a game, is probably never going to see it down in the NFL again. Two other injuries that added up to the drama with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, which the 49ers essentially outed Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders. I thought it was a solid contract all the way around, given the market that the NFL quarterback contracts are today. I thought it was a solid one. I mean, no one's going to put this guy in the conversation as Mahomes or Jackson or Josh Allen, or even guys like Jalen Hurts or Jaden Daniels, who are my top five. But it's a solid contract for what they do in San Francisco with that offense, because no one's asking him to be a Superman. Just asking him to do something and do whatever enough that is necessary to get the job done. And I think it was a solid contract. I mean, you can talk about the guarantees and the overpays you want, but it's a synopsis of where the NFL contracts have gone in today's NFL, especially at the quarterback position. Started, with the fully guaranteed fiasco that Cleveland gave Deshaun Watson, to guys like, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, the renewed contract with Josh Allen during the offseason. Even guys like Jalen Hurts got a contract extension, among many others. Of course, now the question is what's going to happen with the contract of C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans. I expect him to get a figure maybe higher than that, because now the barometer has been set. But I thought it was a solid contract given to Brock Purdy, given what they do in San Francisco. No one's going to put him in that conversation, obviously, so you're truly not going to do it either. But I thought it was solid. I thought it was going to be more than that. And I thought it was going to set more fireworks, but it didn't. People are going to have their opinions. He got the contract. He got paid. Nothing anybody can do about it. I thought it was solid. It was well-deserved, and they can move forward and get that out of the way. Now, of course, they also extended their standout linebacker, Fred Warner, 3 years, $63 million. I thought it was a well-deserved contract for a guy who's probably one of the premier middle linebackers in the National Football League. This place demonstrates it. So the 49ers took care of their drama early, unlike last year where it was just all over the place with the IU contract, what they want to do with Deebo Samuel, the Nick Bosa contract. Now they can just go into the offseason and try and prepare for a rebounding season, which we know last year was just absolutely abysmal, given everything they went through. And, of course, there was a Trent Williams drama. Who knows what's going to happen with him? But it was a solid offseason all around for the San Francisco 49ers. and taking care of the contracts of Purdy and Fred Warner, as well as George Kittle earlier in the offseason, I think is going to allow them to move on and focus on the season, which is something they need to do given what happened last offseason and during the season where everything was a hot mess. Actually started when McCaffrey got hurt and had to go overseas for a second opinion, and it turned out worse than what everybody thought. So the 49ers, they're supposed to have one of the easier schedules coming into the NFL this season, which we know how that goes. But we'll see where it takes them. Remember, there's 2 years removed from having a Super Bowl appearance in the loss of Kansas City at the final play of the game. The NFC West, I think it can be up for grabs. I mean, none of the 4 teams really stand out. I think if the 49ers can get their act together, they could be a player in that division. And it's basically going to be a case of somebody winning that division to get into the playoffs. I think they have a real shot to win it. I'll divulge that in my NFL preview once the season comes closer. So that takes care of the particulars of the Brock Purdy and 49ers situation. We move on to, speaking of the NFL, this week they're going to rule on 2 things this season. Coming up. 2 of them are really hot button topics. One of them's been a hot button topic for the last 5 years. The first one, of course, is the playoff seeding. The story here is, whatever seeding, whoever has the better record gets the home field game. Again, a lot of outcries from everybody all over the place. Again, I went back and forth on this because this is all over the place. Basically, what you're trying to say is the team with a better record gets the home game of the 2. I get it. But you're trying to devalue division winners. I get it. Here's the thing. If you're winning 10, 11 games in the regular season, and win 11 to 12 games in the regular season, doesn't matter where the road you play. I mean, for you to win 11 to 12 games during a regular season in the NFL, that means you have to be winning at least 3, some cases 4 games on the road. That means you should be able to win on the road regardless of who the opponent is. I mean, if you're 11-5 and going to a road team that's 8-8, you would think they should be able to take care of business on the road, should they? I mean, a case in point was a couple of years ago when the 7-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosted the I think it's the 12-5 Dallas Cowboys, where Dallas just went into Tampa Bay and just destroyed them all over the place. Turned out to be the final game of Tom Brady's career. But if you're winning 11 to 12 games a season, that means you're winning games on the road. I mean, I don't think the seeding is going to matter as much as people think. Some people say home field advantage matters as much. But if you're winning 12 games a season and you have to travel on the road, that means you're good enough to win games on the road. And I don't think it matters what the seeding it is. Of course, there's some hubbub of this going back to a wild card game in the 2010 NFC wild card game between the 11-5 New Orleans Saints against the 7-9 Seattle Seahawks, where the Seahawks had the home game because they were the division winner. Saints were the top wild card. The hubbub was there all along. But the Saints were winning road games. And if you couldn't beat a 7-9 team, regardless of whether you're at home or on the road, you deserve to be eliminated from the playoffs. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you are. And I don't care where you're playing. If you have 11 to 12 wins and you're playing a team that has 7 or 8 wins, wild card round, divisional round, whatever, and you can't beat a team that's only won 7 or 8 games during the season, you deserve to be eliminated. I'm sorry. I don't care about seeding. I don't care about positioning. That part doesn't matter at the end of the day. I don't know if this vote will pass. There's a lot of hubbub over it, but we know that's why they play the games. But if you're winning 12 games year in and year out, like many of these teams do, I mean, we're talking about like the Kansas Cities, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, even teams like the NFC, the Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings, the Philadelphia Eagles. Even I should throw the Washington Commanders in there because they won 10 games also. If you're winning double-digit games a season, that means you're winning games on the road. And if you're playing a team that has 3 to 4 fewer wins than you, and you can't win on their turf in the playoffs, you deserve to be eliminated. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. This is going to set sparks all over the place. I'll wait till the final vote to make my final opinion on it because I've gone back and forth on this. But the bottom line is you're winning 12 games during a season, 12, 13 games, and you have to go on the road. You should be able to win on the road because you're winning on the road in the regular season. Doesn't matter who it is or who the opponent is. Now we're going to touch on the real hot topic in the NFL voting coming up this week. Of course, it's been a hot topic for the last 5 to 6 years. Everybody's favorite topic that sets sparks all over the place, the tush push. Everybody knows when the Philadelphia Eagles get, half inch, third inches, fourth inches, whether it be to the first down or to the touchdown, they want to do this quarterback sneak where they supposedly push Jalen Hurts over for the half-yard marker to get the first down or the touchdown in that situation. Problem is this. I've said this constantly. If you're a defense that allows third and short or fourth and short, you deserve to get burnt for a first down, regardless. Reason being, it's 1st and 10. It's 1st and 10. That means you're allowing 9 yards or 9.5 yards to get to that first down marker. Once you get to that point, you get what you deserve in the end. If you can't stop them from getting that first down marker, you're going to get burnt. And if it's 1st and goal, or 3rd and goal, 4th and goal in the inches, and you can't prevent anyone from getting to the first down or touchdown marker, you're going to get what you deserve. I don't understand why everyone's giving a hubbub over it. I mean, is it the most greatest play in the world? No. Is it one that's going to set ratings? No. Is it style? No. It's substance. It's called winning football. Short yardage situations, inches, 1 yard. Not 90% of the quarterbacks do it. Okay. It's not just, Jalen Hurts does it. I've seen Josh Allen do it. I've seen Lamar Jackson do it. I've seen Jaden Daniels do it. I've seen CJ Stroud do it. I mean, I would like to see Patrick Mahomes do it more. I can bring on some others that do it. It's by design. And if you're trying to take that away, what does it say about you at the end of the day? If you can't take it away, you're the problem. I mean, 1st and 10. You talk about 10 yards to get to a first down situation. You have 3 downs to prevent that from happening. And if you can't prevent it, you deserve to get what's coming your way. I mean, even if it's a measly half yard for a first down or what? I mean, but here's another thing. If they want to take it away, guess what? The Philadelphia Eagles will still be successful because you're talking about one of the premier offensive lines in the entire NFL. Of course, the extension to Cam Jurgens, their center during the offseason. And they're going to find other ways to succeed in short yardage situations. When you have the standout quarterback Jalen Hurts and the running back Saquon Barkley, they're going to have offensive versatility in short yardage situations. They can do anything and everything they want. And if anybody has a problem with it, too bad. Because begging for a rule on a play that's basically almost irrelevant on a half-yard situation, when you should be able to stop a team from getting in that situation, you're basically asking a bailout from the NFL and the voters. Something tells me this one is not going to end all that great because somebody's not going to be happy, whether you're for it or whether you're against it. But when you want this rule banned, you're bailing out the defense. That's another issue. You should be able to stop them to get to that point. If you don't want to be burnt on a tush push, let me back up. If you want to prevent yourself from being burnt on a 3rd and short and 4th and short situations in a goal line situation from a touchdown, you have 3 downs to prevent it from happening. Might as well take care of your business because if you don't, you're getting what you deserve. Period. Now, this one's not going to be the greatest in the world for anyone. And on to another topic. I touched on this briefly last week, but technical malfunctions prevented me from talking more about it. So I will go ahead and rehash the issue again. It is the NFL schedule release that took place over the weekend. Everyone's up in arms over who's playing who's playing when, the international games, et cetera, et cetera. I got a chance to look at this further. I think week 1, I think they're sort of making sort of a splash. I mean, you talk about Dallas and Philly, the Chiefs and the Chargers, although I don't agree with that game being in Brazil. I'll touch on the international part here in a second. The Sunday night game, of course, is Baltimore and Buffalo, a rematch of that great divisional game last season. That might be set the tone for the season to come for both teams. Moving on forward to some other games worth talking about. The NFC North matchups between Green Bay, Detroit, and Minnesota. If you remember last season, all 3 teams surpassed 11 wins. I'd like to see what Washington does this season. I mean, I said earlier, the 49ers have the easiest schedule, at least percentage-wise. We'll see if they can bounce back because they had a lot of problems last season and they just fell off the map. I think the Thanksgiving Day schedule is a barn burner. I mean, Green Bay at Detroit, Kansas City at Dallas, Cincinnati at Baltimore. That's going to be a heck of a Thanksgiving Day triple header. The Christmas games are going to be good. I mean, great games all over the place. Of course, the big one, I think it's week 9 this year, Kansas City at Buffalo. The two premier quarterbacks in the NFL at the moment, Patrick Mahomes of Kansas City and Josh Allen of Buffalo. Of course, Baltimore goes to Kansas City in the rematch of the 23 AFC title game, and also a rematch of probably the most exciting season opener in NFL history, where Isaiah likely looked like he caught the touchdown, but the toe was out of bounds. They're going to have a rematch week 4. Should be a good one. Always a great quarterback battle between Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. A lot of good games all over the place. There's a lot of positives. I'll touch on the negatives here real quick. I have never been a prognosticator of the international game. I think it's gotten abused and it's gotten ridiculous. Having a high-profile division game week 1 between the Chiefs and the Chargers, who are probably going to be the two top teams in the AFC West, having to take place in Brazil instead of whoever's got a lot of home game. I think it's the Chargers, if I'm correct. To have that kind of a division game on international play, I think it's just an absolutely ridiculous idea, because you just devalue divisional games when you do this. This game belongs in either Kansas City or Los Angeles, because those two teams are probably going to finish the top 2 in the AFC West. Well, I think Denver's going to have something to say also. Having division games abroad is not the greatest idea ever. Just makes next to no sense. Now, of course, they expanded. You have the Minnesota Vikings traveling abroad twice this season. I think one was in Ireland to play the Steelers. The next week they go, I believe it's either England or Germany, I can't remember, to play Cleveland. That's a weird thing to do. A couple other teams in there, I can't think of it. But I've never been a prognosticator of international play, because I think it basically backs the NFL's claim, actually, at least my claim all along, that the NFL doesn't give a darn about player safety, because that's a part of it, because traveling is a part of the problem. And number 2, if you're trying to, there's other ways you can globalize the product without having to send teams over there, especially today when there's all kinds of, internet streaming, live streaming, among many other things. You should be able to do that. The fact that NFL wants to go down this route tells you everything you need to know. Because I've never been a fan of the international play, because time zone differences is going to be a factor, obviously. Actually, I think in the next couple of years, they're talking about going to, of all countries, Australia, which is like a 12-hour difference from here. And of all countries, the United Arab Emirates, out there in the Middle East. You're going to have a game in the Middle East. I mean, I know the NFL product is one that catches the global eye. I get it. But now you're expanding games that nobody likes the international schedule. It basically, in some countries, some of the games, why would you have a divisional game between the Chiefs and the Chargers when those two are going to finish the top 2 in the AFC West, more than likely, abroad? Because if it comes down to those two, theoretically, I'm playing theory here. If it comes down to a 1-game difference and it comes down to a game that's abroad, whoever finishes second place is going to have this right to say the game took place on foreign soil, when it should have been taking place in the States. The NFL is an Americanized marketing product. Everybody knows this. I know they want to go global. Not sure putting high-profile divisional matchups like the Chiefs and Chargers week 1 in Sao Paulo, Brazil is the answer. I mean, there's other ways you can market the game. Doing it with travel like this is not the way to go. I've never been a fan of it. I mean, I get it. Many years back, it was always, the teams in the bottom 5 of the NFL record-wise. Like say theoretically, you'd have the Browns and the Titans right now at a game. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Now you're talking about having top flight teams like the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Vikings who are going to be traveling abroad. That's a problem, and that's something the NFL needs to correct. I mean, I get the globalization of it, but there are other ways to go about it, especially today when everything's all out in the open when it comes to, live streams, among many other things. And speaking of scheduling, a lot of griping here in Cincinnati, and now another moron named Warren Sharp, the idiot who likes to read off a teleprompter like Joe Biden and has a porn stash reject from the 80s. Everybody's in Cincinnati yapping about this still, that they have to go to Baltimore on Thanksgiving night. They went in 2022 on a Sunday night tilt. They went 2023, the game that Joe Burrow injured his wrist, and the wild game last season, all three in Baltimore. And the Bengals fans, the Super Play fans, the media people, and now this character called Warren Sharp has a problem with it. Newsflash, shut up. You want to correct this? Go in Baltimore on Thanksgiving night. Plain and simple. If you guys are complaining about having to go to the same place 3 straight years, as you guys are, you're complaining about nothing because it's not going to get you anywhere. Everybody knows Baltimore, one of those places is where on a night game, it hits different. Everybody knows this. It's a ratings draw. Is it worth complaining about? No. Why? Because the Bengals fans have no leg to stand on when it comes to complaining about having to play Thanksgiving night of all places in Baltimore. Doesn't matter if it's in Baltimore or if it's in Cincinnati or if it's in Korea or if it's in Mexico or if it's on the other side of the grave of Bruce Lee. Doesn't matter. If you guys want to handle your business, shut up and go beat the Ravens. You got a chance to do that coming up on Thanksgiving night. Because if you're complaining about a schedule the way it is, especially like you guys in Cincinnati are, you guys are the problem, not the schedule makers. But you guys have a chance to rectify that wrong on Thanksgiving night. Shut your mouths, go out there, get the job done. Because you have no leg to stand on when it comes to complaining about the scheduling, no leg to stand on when it comes to many things when it comes to Bengals football. You guys don't. Why? Because it doesn't get you anywhere. You guys whine about some of the stupidest stuff over here in Cincinnati. Shoot, you guys even whining about porta potties over here. That tells you what's the problem with Cincinnati Bengals fans. Actually, I'd go down there in a couple of hours myself. Ugh. And speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, it has now come out that an offer was made to Trey Hendrickson, the edge rusher on the defensive side. We know this drama's gone all over the place. Now, apparently, it was reported around $28 million. Remember, this guy's going to be 31 some point in the season. But I don't know how true the rumor is because we know how the Bengals front office works. They work in this sense. It is simply because that the guarantees is always going to be the problem. Everybody here in Cincinnati knows the story with Andrew Whitworth when he was here, and he told the whole story on a podcast not too long ago how the Bengals front office slighted him in terms of guarantees and what he wanted. Basically made him the offer to where Andrew Whitworth could have said, basically easily said, thank you very much, but I'm done. Know the story there. Spends a few years with the Rams, gets a Super Bowl ring in Super Bowl 56 against, of all teams, the Cincinnati Bengals. But it's, again, a case of how the front office operates, how the front office wants to be. But Trey Hendrickson is not helping his own cause by putting his name out there and putting the business out there the way he is. Right now, both sides are losing. I don't think there's any winner of this. Both sides are losing. The front office lost because they should have had this done 2-3 years ago. And Trey Hendrickson's losing because he continues to put this out in the public. He continues to say the things he says in public. And everyone is just, up in arms over who's doing what, who's winning or whatnot. To me, I think nobody's winning because this thing should have been done a long time ago. Whether extending Trey Hendrickson or trading Trey Hendrickson, whatever. Now it's lingered into this deep in the offseason with all the mandatory camps coming up. We're going to see what he does. He's talked about holding out. I still hold out that he's not going to go that far because everybody knows what happened with Le'Veon Bell of the Pittsburgh Steelers when he held out the entire season. And, of course, last season, the closest thing to it was Hassan Reddick when he was traded to the Jets. He eventually came back. I don't see Trey Hendrickson going that far. I understand why that's a part of this situation with him, simply because he's not happy. I mean, he saw the contracts that Max Crosby got from the Raiders. He saw what Myles Garrett got from the Cleveland Browns. And additionally, he saw the one-year deal that Danielle Hunter got from the Houston Texans, like 1 year, $36 million. And he wants to be paid in that market. Understandably so. but it didn't help the fact he put everything out in the open, because I've always said when you talk about negotiations among, contract extensions or trades or whatever, you put that out in the open, you diminish your value. I mean, I don't know who really has a leverage in this, the team or him, but this whole thing has gone way farther than it should. And the problem is both sides let it get to this point. And because they let it get to this point, it's a hot mess. This should have been done at least a year or two ago. The opportunity was there. Neither side wanted to take advantage of it. That's why last offseason, Hendrickson flunked a trade rumor out, more so his agent Harold Lewis than him. So we'll see where this one goes. I don't know. I'm not buying that the contract offer was made. I mean, I get that from the Bengals' point of view, I guess, but I'm not going to give the front office a time of day for it. But let me remind people of everything once again. This is a byproduct of what took place from 2023 on to now. It started when they made a signing to a third-tier left tackle named Orlando Brown Jr., made him the highest paid at the time on a contract he had no business getting, and it set a Twitter party and a Cincinnati party like none other, because they thought the Bengals signing Orlando Brown Jr. was going to put him over the hump of the Super Bowl, thought it was a net negative for the Chiefs, when basically it was a net positive for the Chiefs, because the Chiefs got rid of a basically dead weight, and the Bengals took it on, and ever since the Bengals signed Orlando Brown Jr., the 2023 and 2024 seasons, the Bengals missed the playoffs. The Chiefs had back-to-back Super Bowl appearances and a Super Bowl win on top of it. That should tell you where the Bengals went wrong when they signed Orlando Brown Jr., because now Trey Hendrickson is the one that has to feel the repercussions out of all of this. It's a byproduct of all of this. When you mismanage your offseason the way the Bengals did the last 3 years, this is going to happen. Don't say you weren't warned, because I warned you guys. Something tells me this one is going to last through the offseason, and I'll be talking about this more. Hopefully this thing is done once and for all before the season starts. Now, that takes care of my wild, long NFL segment. Never talked NFL that much in quite some time. But I'll go ahead and touch on everybody's favorite topic over the weekend. And now this one, we know this one says us fireworks. What took place in the WNBA game in Indianapolis over the weekend, the so-called flagrant foul that Caitlin Clark put on the narcissist Angel Reese. And we know Angel Reese flopped like a soccer player. I don't think soccer players flopped as bad as Angel Reese did, because that was basically the equivalent of a good foul. It's amazing to me how everything is a flagrant these days, and it's amazing to me how everyone wants to go to bat in the WNBA for a character of Angel Reese's caliber the way they are. This is something all levels are taught. Collegiate, professional, even high school, men's, women's, whatever, because I've seen it in the NBA for the longest time. Someone is that wide open to the rim, that's what you're supposed to do. Make him run out of the foul line. I mean, what's wrong with that? You guys remember I know the story about the Jordan rules from the 80s Pistons when they did that to Michael all the time? Shoot, even the 90s Knicks did that throughout many of their games, not just against the Jordan Bulls, but many others. And even the Jerry Sloan-led Utah Jazz for the longest time led the league in fouls. Why? Because they weren't giving you anything easy near the rim. That's what Caitlin Clark did. It was much ado about nothing, but per usual, Angel Reese and the WNBA wants to make a big hubbub out of something that's really nothing, because they feel the need to go to bat for a self-centered narcissist who basically blows layups on purpose so she can pad rebounding stats. And we know Angel Reese really can't hold a candlelight to Caitlin Clark. I don't care about the national title at LSU, because that's just ancient history as we know it. But when we think about the now, Angel Reese knows she can't hold a candlelight to Caitlin Clark. That's why she resorted to what she did, trying to stir a riot when basically it's a whole lot of nothing at the end of the day. It was basically a hard foul when someone goes to the rim like that wide open. That's what players were taught over the years at all levels, in high school, collegiate, pro. Someone has a wide open rim, don't give them anything easy. Challenge it, if not foul them, especially someone like Angel Reese, who's not a great foul shooter. Make him run out of the foul line. That's the old-fashioned way. Think about all the years Shaquille O'Neal, when he was underneath the basket, he got hammered. And there are times he wasn't just getting hit. I mean, they're basically like winding up the fist and chopping at him. I mean, he was taking some hard fouls, and they were doing it because they knew Shaq was a poor free throw shooter. And when Shaq was in that lane, everybody was fouling him every chance they got. Put him to the foul line. That's what Caitlin Clark did to Angel Reese. Is that exact same thing? Anyone that's making a big deal out of it is a moron. Period. Oh, I mean, calling it a flagrant, it's a byproduct of today's basketball. I get it. But that's what you're taught in the little leagues, the collegiate level, and the pros. When you see someone who's a mediocre foul shooter get a wide open layup like the way Angel Reese did, you do what Caitlin Clark did. You get out there, commit the foul, make him run out of the foul line. And of course, Reese bricks the free throw. We know the story about that. That's why she can't hold a candlelight to Caitlin Clark. That's why she's a narcissist, because she feels a need to make something more dramatic than it needs to be. But kudos to Caitlin Clark. She did what she did, and she walked away, while Angel Reese wants to stir up drama unnecessarily because she's a bona fide narcissist. And they're like the worst people you can ever deal with, narcissists. Well, speaking of basketball, now we go to my favorite part, some of the historical aspect of it. It was 45 years ago to this weekend at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, where maybe a budding legend's coming out party took place. It was Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals. This was between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Philadelphia 76ers. The story of this one was in Game 5, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was averaging nearly 34 points a game in that finals, had an ankle injury late in the game and couldn't go for Game 6, and they needed a center. Enter the rookie 6'9" out of Michigan State, a fellow named Earvin Magic Johnson, going head-to-head with Dr. J. Julius Erving, who was the starting center at that point. 42 points, 13 rebounds, even times in that game where he mimicked the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sky hook, and the Lakers clinched Game 6 of the 1980 Finals with that performance, 123-107, to win the first of Magic Johnson and the Lakers' 5 NBA titles during the Showtime run of the 80s. The versatility in basketball, today's more of a must. We all know this. I mean, you got to be able to do many things in many positions. Before all of this came around, that fellow named Magic Johnson did a lot of that. It goes to show the guy wasn't just a fast one-man fast break playmaker who can make the dazzling passes. The guy could put points up if he wants to. The guy could score any way if he wanted to. And on this night, 45 years ago at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, Magic Johnson did just that. Basically, you could probably say his finest hour in NBA history. Of course, some people point to the sky hook that beat the Boston Celtics in Game 4 of the 87 Finals. But from my money and in my opinion, this was his coming out party and maybe his finest hour for him to step into the shoes of a center icon like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and to nearly mimic what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was doing basically the entire finals at that point, to drop 42 points on the Philadelphia 76ers in a game-clinching Game 6 to win the NBA championship in Philadelphia and become the 1980 Finals MVP. You knew greatness was coming, and Magic Johnson demonstrated it. He was more than just a playmaker. He brought it, and he brought it well. Kudos to Magic Johnson. You know, the rest of his career there, the multiple MVPs, Finals MVPs, championships. You could probably say a top player of the 80s. Of course, the centerpiece of the top rivalry in the 1980s at the time with him and Larry Bird, when Magic's Lakers went against Larry Bird's Celtics. But it was 45 years ago today. He made his coming out party, made his presence felt when he dropped 42 points, basically covering for an injured Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, playing his position, mimicking what he does, and basically performing well to a T, almost to mere perfection. And that's when the Magic Man was introduced to the rest of the world. The guy was more than just a passer, people. The research is out there. YouTube or Google the Game 6 1980 Finals. That's what it's going to be remembered for. Now we venture into what everybody calls my specialty, although I have no specialty. Let me just get that out of the way. The world of boxing. I just get one part out of the way here real quick. This is coming through the news waves. I guess now Jake Paul and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. finally agreed to whatever the frick they want to agree to. And now I guess Jake Paul says he's trying to get a catchweight fight with Tank Davis, which I think is just a ridiculous idea. Tank Davis has bigger fish to fry than Lamont Roach, but we know Jake Paul is just a human vagina, and he only wants fights under his terms. The guy accused Canelo Alvarez of ducking him when Canelo Alvarez has bigger fish to fry with Terrence Crawford, but we know Jake Paul is the biggest human vagina ever created. But I'll just get that out of the way. Now to the historical aspect of it, and an intriguing story. This one took place 60 years ago at Nagoya, Japan. This was a fighter named Masahiko fighting Harada, taking on Eder Jofre for the undisputed bantamweight championship of the world. Everybody's fixated with Naoya Inoue in today's fight community. Yes, he is that electric. Way before Japan and the world was introduced to Naoya Inoue, there was a guy named Masahiko fighting Harada, an exciting fighter, high volume puncher, always came at you, fighting the standout Eder Jofre, who was the world bantamweight champion, unbeaten in 50 fights, and basically one of the more action-packed fights that took place in Nagoya, Japan. Basically, Jofre, who was a favorite, did everything he could, but Harada just kept coming and showed the whole world why he's probably arguably the greatest fighter to come out of Japan at the moment, although I expect Inoue to surpass that at some point if he hasn't already. But I mentioned this because everyone is so fixated on where Inoue stands in boxing history. There was a guy 6 decades ago named Fighting Harada who was just like Inoue, who dazzled the Japanese public, brought boxing to the limelight in the Far East, and basically made a name for himself, winning his second world championship at 118 pounds when he beat the unbeaten standout Eder Jofre on a split decision to win his second world bantamweight championship. Eder Jofre has the distinction of the greatest bantamweight of all time. Basically, I don't say he's unanimous, but it's pretty much universal. You could probably argue Harada is not far behind him, and his resume in itself speaks volumes. I mean, talking about with him, he had a couple wins over standouts like, if I can process it correctly, he had a rematch with Jofre, got a win on that one, where basically they went to Tokyo, Japan. It was called Nippon Budokan, now known as the Tokyo Dome. Beat guys like Tony Palacio and Antonio Herrera, who was a standout fighter in a non-title fight. Basically, before that, stayed in the Far East. There's a deep tradition in the Far East from then to now, and that Fighting Harada is a part of that tradition that lived through that particular era. And when he hit his peak 60 years ago today, he put his place in my bantamweight boxing history, was the first to beat Eder Jofre, who was a standout fighter out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, had to travel cross country in a fight that was basically fight of the year material. Both guys at 118 pounds, just high volume punchers, just let it go. While everyone's so fixated with Naoya Inoue, rightfully and understandably so, there was a Naoya Inoue type 6 decades ago. His name was Fighting Harada, fought the best, beat the best, 2-time undisputed champion at bantamweight, one of the more successful little big men maybe to ever enter the sport, especially in the bantamweight divisions, coming out of the Far East at a time when the fighters in the Far East started to make their mark in the sport. Fighting Harada, also known as Masahiko Harada, made his mark. And he certainly did that 50 years ago today when he stunned the surreally all-time great Eder Jofre on a split decision win to put his name among the all-time great bantamweights. And we talk about the all-time great bantamweights before I proceed. 2 of them I mentioned fought 60 years ago, Jofre and Harada. Ruben Olivares, before Chavez and Sanchez. Olivares had the distinction of the greatest the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. Another guy of that ilk, Carlos Zarate, one time out of Mexico himself, one-time super feather, one-time bantamweight champ himself, was a 1977 fighter of the year. You talk about we move on forward. Orlando Canizales, the longest tenured bantamweight champion in the division's history, probably the only U.S.-born one to have any kind of claim to, that distinction, because fighters who were born out of the States weren't born in those weight classes. One of the few that were and was a technically sound fighter who was all around all the way through his career. I think he had like 18 successful title defenses, a pros pro in that ring, in the top 5 pound for pound category throughout the early to mid 90s. A terrific fighter was Orlando Canizales. Other fighters in that weight class you talk about, obviously, Miguel Happy Laura had a tough fight with Raul Perez when he won the championship, a two-time world champion in his time. Also, Wilfredo Gomez, who I'm going to touch on here in a second, started his reign at bantamweight, one of the premier Puerto Rican fighters to ever lace him up. Some of the more modern ones who fought in that weight class, Danny Romero and Johnny Tapia in the 90s. Of course, who can forget their fight in 97, the all-Albuquerque, New Mexico brawl. Standout division, but the top two probably were Eder Jofre and fighting Harada, and they fought 60 years ago today in Nagoya, Japan, where Jofre just got outworked by Harada in a terrific fight, and Harada became the undisputed bantamweight champion and put himself among the all-time great little big men to ever come into the sport. I could tell more stories about those two if I want to. Now, from a great night to a controversial night, this one took place at the Roberto Clemente de Coliseo in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It was Wilfredo Gomez, some way, somehow, getting a decision over Rocky Lockridge in a fight where anybody with a brain or anyone that saw this knew that Rocky Lockridge was just victimized by Don King politics. Free TV, NBC, Marv Albert, Freddie Pacheco calling the fight on NBC Sports World. Basically, Lockridge gives him a boxing lesson, does anything and everything he wants to. Third defense of his title after his one-punch knockout of Roger Mayweather a year before. But anyone with a brain who saw the fight 40 years ago in San Juan, Puerto Rico knows there was no way Rocky Lockridge was leaving Puerto Rico with his hand raised in the championship. They were going to do everything, starting with Don King politics, to make sure Rocky Lockridge wasn't going to have the championship, and boy, they sure the heck did it. I mean, all the press writers had at least a 7 to 8 point difference in favor of Lockridge because he did anything and everything he wanted to do to Gomez for the longest time. Gomez, of course, came out a little later, but the feeling was it was too little too late. But it doesn't deter the fact that Wilfredo Gomez is an all-time great in those little weight classes, especially from the country of Puerto Rico. But it was a case of Don King politics getting in the way, per usual, because Don King politics made sure Wilfredo Gomez was going to be the one to have his hand raised in his own home country of San Juan, Puerto Rico, with a chance to become a world champion in his third weight class at the time when he won the super featherweight championship from Rocky Lockridge in one of the most despicable decisions in boxing history, probably a top 10 in that regard, because there was no way whatsoever you could really legitimately say Gomez should have been crowned the winner. Rocky Lockridge was victimized bad by Don King politics that day on free TV. I mean, nothing against Gomez, who's a standout, bantamweight, super bantamweight, and even jumped up to super featherweight to win this championship from Lockridge. But it was a Don King decision. Everybody knows this. Everybody can tell you about it. They knew it then. It's easy to see it now, more so ever, given the fact that Don King politics was a problem then. And the information is out there now. You can see what Don King politics did to Rocky Lockridge when they basically just screwed him out of his championship in San Juan, Puerto Rico, because the Puerto Rican politics, as well as Don King politics, made sure Wilfredo Gomez was going to be the winner and crowned the champion on that night 40 years ago in Puerto Rico. I could go on about more Don King politics decisions, but those in the fight game know how Don King politics decisions worked over the years. And from controversial to virtuoso. This was 35 years ago today. This took place at the Indoor Pavilion at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas on HBO. It was Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker with probably his most virtuoso performance maybe ever, when he just shut out a pros pro, an all-time great, and Azumah Nelson, basically winning every round, in my opinion, just dominating Nelson from start to finish. And basically, he made Azumah Nelson look like an amateur, which is something remotely impossible to do at the time, because Azumah Nelson was just a pros pro. I mean, 2-division world champion, was gunning for a third, fighting Pernell Whitaker, who was climbing up the pound-for-pound rankings. And Azumah Nelson tried, but anything he did, Pernell Whitaker had an answer for, and that's why they called him Sweet Pea, because he was sweet on that night, basically pitching a near shutout against a premier all-time great in Azumah Nelson. Maybe his greatest win, official win. I mean, we know about the robberies with Ramirez and among many others. And just dusted off an all-time great and Azumah Nelson, as if Azumah Nelson didn't even belong in the ring with him. Now, let me remind you, this is the same Azumah Nelson who several years before gave the late Salvador Sanchez all he could handle before Sanchez stopped him in the 15th round, which was the only loss in Nelson's career prior to the fight against Pernell Whitaker. And Pernell Whitaker just made Azumah Nelson look like an amateur, just gave him a boxing lesson from start to finish. The virtuoso Pernell Whitaker style, make you miss, make you pay. And that's what he did to the great Azumah Nelson. It was something surreal because no one thought you could do that to Azumah Nelson. Pernell Whitaker did. And let me remind you, this was the same place that Pernell Whitaker basically won a spot in the 1984 Olympics, the indoor pavilion at Caesar's Palace. And he basically duplicated that performance again with a total obliteration of the standout Azumah Nelson when he got the unanimous decision win. Basically, it was a virtual shutout for the most part. I mean, Nelson maybe won a round tops, if that. But what a win for Pernell Whitaker, maybe the biggest of his career, because this was the win that elevated him into the pound-for-pound category, which he was going neck and neck with guys like Julio Cesar Chavez and Terry Norris at the time, because that was a battle for that distinction. And Pernell Whitaker started his rise 35 years ago when he dusted off a pros pro and an all-time great himself into Professor Azumah Nelson. Azumah Nelson got taken to school that night, something I never thought I'd say or something anyone could say when it comes to fighting Azumah Nelson. Pernell Whitaker found a way to do that. And I close on a wild scene that took place a year later after that. This was at the Reno Sparks Convention Center in Reno, Nevada. This was the second of a wild two-fight series between Hector Camacho and Greg Haugen. I bring this up because everyone knows how wild the sport is. Knows it has everything. I mean, style, skill, will, bizarre personalities, among many other things. This two-fight series with these two had everything. This was a rematch of a wild first fight. And in that first fight that took place the 3 months before that, the fight was won because Hector Camacho lost a point for refusing to touch Greg Haugen's gloves to start the 12th round. He wouldn't touch gloves to start the 12th round. Camacho throws a little flurry, loses a point because Greg Haugen, being the moron that, being the sucker-filled coward that he is, suckered Hector Camacho in. And Hector Camacho, being the moron that he was, fell for it, lost a point, and that point cost Hector Camacho the fight the first time. And also cost him a near $7 million payday against Julio Cesar Chavez at the time. Now, they fought later, obviously, but at the time, he lost out on a $7 million payday. But after the fight, Greg Haugen tested positive for a banned substance and got into depression. And because of it, the fight was apparently ruled a no contest. The whatever belt they had at that time was vacated, and they had a rematch 3 months after it that took place at the Reno Sparks Convention Center. And basically, the pre-fight hype for this was just all over the place, where Hector Camacho was going at it with press reporters. Greg Haugen and Camacho were going at it. Hector Camacho takes a slap at Greg Haugen, and then Camacho's manager and a respected boxing aficionado named Michael Morley went at it. The pre-fight hype for the second fight was through the roof. And when it came down to this fight, it was a case of maybe the prototypical post-Rosario version of what Hector Camacho was. Started out strong, got the first 4 rounds, obviously, and nearly faded down the stretch. Haugen was coming on strong. Looked like he was going to get a knockout. Actually, at the end of the 11th round, a sucker punch by Hector Camacho cost him a point. Looked like that point was going to cost Camacho the fight again. And Greg Haugen just poured it on to the 12th round. Looked like he was going to get a knockout on Camacho. But Camacho escapes with a closer than necessary split decision win in a fight that was, you could probably say this 2-fight series with Greg Haugen was the epitome of what the post-Edwin Rosario version of Hector Camacho was and became erratic, sporadic, peaks and valleys, wildly inconsistent, and that's what we had here. And you had since it was going to catch up to him, it did 3 months before this, nearly caught up with him in the second fight. But the fortunate thing for him was he built a 4-round lead and basically just sat on it the rest of the way. And even though Haugen came on out of nowhere, blazing hot, Camacho escaped. Now, of course, it was real after that fight. He would travel to the border of Mexico to call for a fight with Julio Cesar Chavez. He got it a year later, about a year, 4 months later, after the second win over Greg Haugen. And Chavez was given the beating of his life, and that was all she wrote. But this 2-fight series between Hector Camacho and Greg Haugen, no one's going to put it in the all-time great category, but it certainly was the most wildest. We can consider the pre-fight hype, the during the fight hype, and the post-fight shenanigans that took place between the two, the respective training camps, and the fact that one flunked a drug test and the other one was just inconsistently sporadic throughout his career. It was spontaneous combustion all over the place. I mean, Greg Haugen wasn't necessarily the second coming of anyone spectacular either, but he had a respectable career. You know, he did split the series with Camacho, got a win over a fadeaway Mancini. Had 2 beatdown losses in the hands of Julio Cesar Chavez and Tony Lopez. Had a wild 3-fight series with a fighter from the northwestern country of the United States named Paul Nave. Got a decision winning one of those Tier 10 World Championships, but that was all she wrote for him. But from the Hector Camacho point of view, this was symbolic of who he was after the Rosario fight, and basically, you got a feeling the rest of the way for him it wasn't going to be all that good because he got beaten to a drum by Chavez a year later, had 2 undeserved title shots against Felix Trinidad and Oscar De La Hoya, where he got just beat down and shut out both times. Got wins over 40-somethings over Roberto Duran and Ray Leonard, which didn't amount to anything. But the post-Edmund Rosario version of Hector Camacho was so erratic and so inconsistent, it basically caught up with him finally. His biggest luck out in the second fight against Greg Haugen was Greg Haugen gave him the first 4 rounds, and basically that was all she wrote. But Hector Camacho had flashes of brilliance, but once Rosario took that brilliance away, it was all she wrote. And the capper really came in this 2-fight series with Greg Haugen in 1991. The capper being the second fight 34 years ago today at the Reno Sparks Convention Center. Still a heck of a good fight. But Camacho did win a championship per se. Maybe his last big win of his career. No, I'm not giving him credit for beating 40-somethings like Duran and Leonard. But that's what the post-Camacho career was after the Rosario fight. Of course, the unfortunate tragedy for him in 2012 when he was shot. And, of course, recently the world lost Greg Haugen as he fought cancer. One of the grittiest, toughest fighters the sport had ever seen. But their 2-fight series had everything and then some. I mean, you could make a WWE script out of the Camacho Haugen series, and it would sell just as well as the 2 fights did, because they certainly sold, because those 2 knew how to sell in and out of the ring. That's what they did. But it was just how erratically inconsistent both fighters, especially Hector Camacho, were when it came to these 2 fights, because they were all over the place. It was a hot mess, but still gave us 2 pretty darn good fights. Oh, I can't wait to talk about the Camacho Rosario fight in a few weeks, because I have a lot to say about that. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. New set, new cameras, new everything, and the same old stuff. If you missed any part of this, you can catch the uploaded versions of my show on the Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify apps. I will be back in a couple of days. Hope everyone has themselves a wonderful rest of the 19th of May, 2025. Weather's getting warmer here in Cincinnati. Go out there and enjoy it. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. Make self-care your number 1 priority in life. Take care of yourself first before you take care of anything else. Good night. Take care, and God bless.